Hello, am I audible? Ajay? Hello, Ajay, am I audible? Hi Gayatri, good evening. Am I audible? Thank you, Supritam, for confirming. Okay, so I guess the moderator is here to join. We'll wait for a while. Hi Janaswamy. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Thank you for confirming. Hi Ajay,
Yeah,
good
yes, yes, yes,
evening.
you can say, yes, yes. We'll just wait for few minutes. We'll start.
Sure, no problem.
The screen also. I want to just see.
Yes, I will share my screen and my video
Yes,
also.
yes,
I hope you can see
yes,
me.
yes, yes. I can.
I'm visible.
Yes, yes, I can see you.
Perfect. And also let me share the presentation so that once it
I'll go and
uh,
come back. Give me 2 minutes now. I want to come back again.
okay Ajay, no problem. Okay, participants, if you can please confirm you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see you, Jayesh.
Perfect. Thank you so much for confirming.
Yes, yes. You can see me. Yes, yes, I can see you.
All right. Thanks Ajay.
Okay. Can we start? Yes, yes.
Okay. Yep. So I guess we have 12 participants and we are good to go. All right. So first of all, very good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all the participants from whichever part of the globe we have joined. I would like to take an opportunity to thank Regional Scrum Gathering Hyderabad 2022 for giving me this opportunity to present my talk on this topic in front of all of you today. And I also thank all the participants who are in this room for making their time out of their busy schedule. Being a Friday evening, especially in India, you might have used this time for doing some personal stuff, but you choose to be over here. And I thank you all of you for that. Okay, so before we begin, can you please tell me from which city you are from? If you are from India, and if you are from outside India, you can write the name of your country in the chat box. Okay, I can see Suprita from Bangalore. Okay, we have a couple of people from Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad. All right. Okay, I guess we do not have anyone outside India, so that's absolutely fine. Okay, we have also a few folks from Chennai. All right. So as you all know that my topic for discussion today is, did India fight against COVID-19 in Scrum way? But before that, is it okay if I take just a few seconds to introduce myself? Type yes in the chat box if it is okay. Thank you, everyone. My name is Jayesh Adia, and I am a CSP, SM certified, ICP, SEC certified Agile coach, and a Scrum trainer with over 15 years of IT experience. I started my career in the year 2007 as a software engineer and got in the way of Agile ways of working, especially into Scrum from 2011 while I was working with CA Technologies, and the journey is still continuing. I am currently working with Volkswagen Group Technology Solutions India Private Limited in Pune as an agile coach. I have delivered over 25 trainings on Scrum and have trained more than 700 participants till now. Being an agile coach, I also have hands-on experience into agile transformation and have coached the teams on how to become a high-performing Scrum team. So that's a brief about me. Coming to our topic, why behind choosing this topic? What were the factors that motivated me to choose this particular topic and gave me an opportunity to present in front of all of you today? This is the statement from Scrum Guide 2020. What it says is, we are humbled to see Scrum being adopted in many domains holding essentially complex work beyond software product development where Scrum has its roots. And Scrum Guide, as we all know that it has been created or co-created by these two learned people, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. So whenever I used to go through Scrum Guide, even being a Scrum trainer and an Agile coach, it is our Gita, Bible, Quran. Day in day out, we have to go through it to get ourselves updated. And as and when I go through it, every time I find something new. But this statement has always wondered me to think over and over again, because being a hardcore IT person, I was not even thinking of whether Scrum is even applicable outside software development. But when I read Scrum Guide over and over, I started looking around. This is where the topic of COVID-19 and Scrum that hit my mind. And this is I got an opportunity to present in front of you today. Before I actually share my views on this, few disclaimers over here so that it does not carry any mindset for all the participants who are over here. First and foremost, this is only for an informative purpose for showing the applicability of Scrum outside software product development. These are only my views which are dealing with COVID-19 pandemic, especially for India. And by presenting this topic, when I go through further, I am not in favor nor against of any states, political parties, people, institutions, or any other countries. I duly respect all of them for whatever they have been doing to fight against this pandemic from last more than 2.5 years. Okay. So please do not carry any perceptions or any prejudices in your mind. This is only for an informative purpose. And is it a fair assumption if I make that we all are aware about Scrum framework and basic jargons of Scrum? Type yes in the chat box if we all are aware about this. Yeah, I can see few yes coming in. All right. Thank you everyone for confirming. And let's begin. Can someone tell me what is a Stacy matrix? You may want to unmute yourself, or you may want to write in the chat box. What is a Stacy matrix? I'm sure many of you must have come across this matrix or at least heard about it. Okay, I guess we have no answer as of now. No worries. Stacy matrix is a matrix which has been created by Rolf Douglas Stacy, and it is mainly to deal with the requirements or maybe the new projects which are coming in into the different ways while we are working on, and it gives reasonably good decision making power while we try to bifurcate the requirements or maybe the new projects via stacymetric. So let me take few seconds to explain what is it. On y-axis that we see, it is the requirement. So whenever we are getting along with the new requirements? As a team, are we close to an agreement to do those requirements? It means, do we know exactly what needs to be done? Are we all on the same page on the understanding? And at the top, we are far from the agreement. It means that not all the team members are agreeing to this. They have certain disagreements among themselves with respect to what needs to be developed or what needs to be delivered. On y-axis, on x-axis rather, we have uh, the requirements solution. So how are we going to deliver the solution of what is asked for? At the beginning, we have something which is close to certainty. It means whether all the team members have the common understanding with respect to the approach on how are we going to build and deliver the solution. And on the extreme side, we have something which is far. It means again similar, that not all the team members are uh, coming on the same page. They have some different opinions, and based on all these combinations, whether both are close to agreement and close to certainty, and both are far from agreement and far from certainty, there are various permutations combination, and every requirement or maybe the project is bifurcated into either of these four categories: may it be simple, may it be complicated, may it be complex, may it be chaotic. Let's try to understand all of this by taking some metaphorical example. Something which is close to an agreement, close to uncertainty, it means we have known problem and known solution. The best example I could think of is riding a bicycle. As of now, if somebody asks us how we can ride a bicycle, I am sure none of us will have a different opinion. We know how to ride the bicycle, and we also know what are the rules and regulations of riding the bicycle. So that is why it is very, very simple. Something which is close to an agreement but far from certainty, or vice versa. It means something we have more known for the problems, or we are more known about the solution. I could think of an example is a culture of a team or an organization. See, all of us must have heard and must have experienced that in many of the organizations they follow open door policy, no hierarchy, and so on and so forth. However, based on my experience, my discussions, my survey with different organizations and different people, although they have these policies in place, uh, and they are followed at a very high level as well, but still, when we discussed about or with different people, they have some different opinion. It is not equally applied on different teams or on different verticals, and there that is where they are not into agreement that okay, we have something in place, but on the floor when it comes to an implementation part, it is not actually followed to the extent that it should be followed. So that is why I feel that it is into a complicated state. Third one is something which is very, very far from agreement and too far from certainty. It means we have just a bit of the information about the problem or the solution. For example, earthquake. We cannot predict when the earthquake is going to come, what is going to be the frequency, how long it will last, and what is going to be the severity of that earthquake. Can we do that? Type yes or no in the chat box. Can we predict when the earthquake is going to come? No. Thank you, Meet Kumar, for responding. Okay. And once the earthquake comes, do we have any solution immediately back into our mind? Let's say if we are on our 10th floor of the building, probably working in our office, we will hardly get some time to get ourselves out of that building and try to save ourselves, by going into an open area or maybe to an assembly point. So that is where I thought that it would be the right candidate for a chaotic environment where an irony is generated. No prediction, no solutions immediately. Although we know that we should be going into the open ground and all, but does it strike our mind at the right point of time? Probably not. And lastly, something the requirement we have. come across which is little far from an agreement, and the solution is also little far from certainty. However, the best thing is if we try to work on those requirements on an iterative and incremental approach, we will be able to find it out more about the what part as well as the how part. And that is where I found COVID-19 being it into a complex domain. And I'm sure all of us are aware that Scrum is mainly suitable for all those projects or all those product developments which are complex in nature, which require iterative and incremental way of working. Okay, the unknowns and the unknowns. Let me ask you a question over here. Out of these two roads, which road has high amount of uncertainty or higher unknowns, and why? It's row picture number one or picture number two? Absolutely. Picture number two. And what is the reason why we have a higher amount of uncertainty over here? Turn, exactly. So we cannot predict when we take a left turn over here, what is going to be the something which is waiting for us. We cannot predict. While in picture number one, the road is very, very straightforward and we have higher amount of known areas in this. What this picture is all about? Has anyone ever come across this picture? Risk? Yes. Anyone? Any other answer somebody would want to try? Okay, it is basically nothing but a cone of uncertainty. What it means is whenever we start a new project or a new product development, the amount of uncertainty is very, very high. And as and when we pass through, we start delivering it, the level of uncertainty goes down day by day. And that is why, how could I thought of uncertainty as well as certainty in terms of COVID is what we were not knowing about. We did not have the right vaccination to fight against COVID to boost our immunity. We also did not have the right amount of medication. Although doctors prescribed the best medication based on their historical experience, they if somebody is found COVID positive, they used to give us some paracetamols, zinc, multivitamin tablets, and they also ask us to rest completely, take some warm water, so on and so forth, right? But it was still again on an experimental basis, especially when we hit with wave 1 in 2020. What we were knowing about, if somebody is found COVID positive, what are the symptoms to identify? He might have come across a high fever, he might have a sore throat, he might be coughing, he might have a shivering kind of and symptoms and so on. What other things that we had is we were aware about what guidelines we should be following. We should wear a mask, we should avoid handshaking rather than we should be doing namaste. Social distancing of 2 meters, avoid going into the crowd, sanitizing your daily stuff that you are using, and regularly washing our hands. Now, as and when we pass through wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, these uncertainty kept on reducing. Initially, when the vaccination was in progress, so many trials, so many do's and don'ts that all the doctors and scientists do. And finally, after maybe 1.5 years of time, we had the right vaccination and right prescription. Okay, I'm sure all of you must have come across this picture in your respective social media. Okay, so this is something wave one. Again, it denotes the amount of uncertainty. We were not knowing how we can save ourselves, and this is what the metaphorical example says. We were just running out that we should not get impacted with COVID-19. Second wave, probably we were safe with wave one, we could not get impacted, and we have a higher amount of confidence that we will be able to face this situation. But unfortunately, that wave hit India a very, very bad way. We know the amount of casualties and the daily cases that were coming in. Third wave, we already learned to live with COVID. We already knew that now COVID is going to stay over here. It will not go away. We also had the vaccination, and many of us have at least first dose of vaccination by the time the third wave came in. How could I see different Scrum values applied during COVID-19? But before that, can someone tell me what are the five values that we have in Scrum? Focus. Yes, we have four more to go. Courage. Only three to go. Respect, openness. Right. Perfect. So let's see about how could I see the Scrum values applied during COVID-19. All the doctors and the scientists were continuously focusing, continuously busy, and they were completely committed in finding the right vaccination as early as possible so that they can get the citizens of India vaccinated. Next is openness. All of us earlier used to go to our offices, our workplaces physically. Work from home was a kind of a dream for many of us, and we had to literally take permissions in case we want to do work from home. And most of you, if you have worked with any of a client which required a dedicated ODC, wherein if your friend is also working within your organization but not part of the same client, he or she will not be allowed to enter into that ODC. And thought about our children. If you are married and you have children in your home, how excited they were in going to the school. But COVID-19 all made those things shut for at least couple of years, and all of us learned to be at home, and we have found our new ways of working. All those organizations wherein work from home was a dream, they also changed, they also showed the openness in terms of allowing their employees work from home. Even the schools of our children were online for 2 years, and I have gone through that a personal example. My daughter, we went for her admission. She was gotten the admission, and after 2 years her physical school started. So for the first 2 years she was studying online. Third one is focus. Day in day out we all were completely focusing on, hey, what is going to remain open, what is going to remain closed. I am into an essential business, I'm into non-essential business. What is going to be applicable, what are the curfew timings, do I again have to adhere to the timelines given by the respective authority, and so on and so forth. Travel guidelines, many of us must have at least heard if not experienced that our relatives or dear ones and near ones might got stuck into another state or into different countries when the first lockdown was announced, and they really had very less amount of time to get back to their home. Now, so continuously we were focusing on, are there any changes in the travel guidelines. The fourth one is courage. Needless to mention how courageous all the doctors, frontline workers, policemen, they did all of their duties with complete dedication. I will not take the other part of which we have been hearing in the news, but especially in wave one and wave two, the life of all of these were really cumbersome. If somebody was having a duty in COVID ward, wearing the PPE kit and treating the COVID patients and all those, uh, when we hear it, it is really bad. And I here would like to draw your attention to a very emotional advertisement that used to come during those days. These doctors, policemen, they come on screen and they used to tell us, we are away from our home so that you can be at your home. So this really touched my heart while this statement they come on the TV and give. Last but not the least, respect. Being the responsible citizens of India, and we know how we can take care of ourselves, how we should save ourselves from getting COVID-19 positive. We all followed all of these guidelines thoroughly. If we found any symptoms with ourselves, we also did RT-PCR without any hesitation. Okay, how did it start? Generally, whenever a new project starts, what is the first step? How does a new project starts? If someone can give, okay, planning, very nice. Anyone else would also want to share their thoughts? Initiation, kickoff, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. So, planning, initiation, kickoff, all those were also part of COVID-19 when it started. The basic thing that I can think of is with all of this, we can create awareness and mindset shift. And that awareness and mindset shift was created by Janta curfew of 1 day in the month of March on a Sunday. I'm not going into dates, but it was a nationwide Janta curfew wherein we were asked to be at our home. The inside message was, hey, the citizens of India, COVID-19 has come and we have to mold ourselves in a different ways of working. We have to learn how to be at home and still continue our business. And then after a couple of days or 3 days, the first sprint of COVID started, the nationwide lockdown of 21 days. Yeah. And this is how I could think of beginning of COVID in Scrum. Okay, how did the Scrum execution happened in Scrum, or rather, how did COVID-19 execution happened in Scrum? Is before I go on, can someone help me identify what are the events out of this diagram and what are the artifacts out of this diagram? What you can see as events, what you can see as artifacts. Okay, so the artifacts are product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment, while the events are sprint planning, daily scrum meeting, sprint review, and retrospective. Am I missing something? Okay, the fifth event or the is sprint itself. Okay, let's try to understand how this execution of COVID-19 happened in Scrum. So initially, as I said, the lockdown was of 3 weeks, and I considered it as sprint one. Generally, Scrum says it should be less than 30 days or less than or equal to 30 days of a timeline. Product backlog, what I could think of might be the user story for COVID-19 project. To name a few, discovering the vaccination, beginning the vaccination trials for different people of a different age group and different segmentation of their area of work, guidelines about what will remain open, what will remain closed. I'm sure you must be remembering that during these lockdown days, especially in wave one, at petrol pumps, only the essential workers were allowed to get the petrol. For the common people, it was not allowed, especially in few states, as far as my knowledge is concerned. What are going to be the home quarantine guidelines if somebody is found COVID positive? Work from home guidelines prepared by the government, interstate travel guideline, and also education guidelines, how we should be able to have our online studies. Now, when the sprint has started, during the sprint planning meeting, these were the priority items that the Scrum team took for their discussion with respect to what, why, and how part. And they discussed all of them as user stories. Beginning phase X of vaccination trial, guidelines on what is open, what is closed, work from home guidelines, so on and so forth. Now, while discussing about sprint planning meeting, since the Scrum team did not have historical idea of how they are going to build in this COVID-19 pandemic, they thought that let's not take all of these things at the same point of time, but rather Let's focus on these four items first in our sprint execution. To begin with, phase X vaccination trials, guidelines on what is open, what is closed, home quarantine guidelines preparation, and preparing interstate travel guidelines. So these are the four user stories that the Scrum team took into their sprint planning meeting as part of this meeting, and the output or outcome rather was sprint backlog. Now the sprint has started, and on daily basis we were hearing news about different things with respect to COVID. What are the COVID cases count on daily basis? Today, the phase X vaccination trial permission has been given to respective authorities, and it might soon get started. Draft is ready for interstate travel guidelines, and soon it will be sent to the respective authority for the approval and for review. New variant of COVID-19 found. By the way, what is the latest variant which is currently in news in India? Anyone has any idea? Which is the latest variant or subvariant? It's BA.4, BA.5, which are the Omicron subvariant, and since last couple of days, I'm also hearing about BA.25. Okay, towards the end, the team also produced an increment which is nothing but meeting the definition of done and a shippable or a potentially shippable product rather. The team started with phase X vaccination trial. Over here, we got that the permission has been given, and during the sprint, that trial has started. Home quarantine guidelines were also formed, and guidelines were also prepared on what shops or what business will remain open, what business will remain closed. Towards the last day or at the last day of the sprint, when they meet during the sprint review, they discussed about all of these items, and they also discussed that what they could achieve, what they could not achieve, and vaccination effects on the people. Since they had already started the vaccination trial, what were the impact, what were the reactions on the people's health? Did they encountered any fever, were there arm pain or any other I would say counter effects of the vaccination, so on and so forth. Offices started functioning with n percentage of capacity, may it be a government, may it be a private. Yeah, no interstate travel guidelines were formed, unfortunately. Over here during sprint planning, it was a commitment by the Scrum team that they will be working on preparing interstate travel guidelines. But at the end of the sprint, unfortunately, they could not mark it as done because it was not meeting its definition of done. Are you able to relate all of this with your respective Scrum deliveries? Is it also happening with you if you are a Scrum Master or if you are Agile coaches? Yeah, whatever the Scrum team has committed, many times we are not able to deliver 100%. So is it good or is it bad? We are not able to meet our commitment. Is it good? Is it bad? Okay, let's not go into that discussion. For some, it might be good. For some, it might not. It depends on the situation. Okay, last but not the least, the event that happens is sprint retrospective. What probably the Scrum team might have discussed is, should we do any change in the gap between two doses of this vaccination? I I'm sure you must be remembering that during the initial stage when the vaccinations were uh, recently launched in the market, that gap was 8 to 12 weeks between two doses of vaccination, may it be Covaxin, may it be Covishield. And later on, when they did inspect and adapt, they come to a conclusion that 6 months is even a better gap for two doses of vaccination. Do we need to revisit these guidelines of keeping something the shops which are running essential or non-essential business? That probably was another point of discussion in retrospective. How to expedite vaccination supply? Are there any states which are running short of vaccination supply? Do they have more people and vaccination is not really enough for those states? So all of those discussions happened, and out of those discussions, some of the inputs came in as part of the retrospective in the next sprint planning. So this was I could thought of as sprint execution for COVID-19. Now let's talk something about commitment. What are the different commitments if you have heard and gone through the latest Scrum guide? Different commitments which are in Scrum Guide 2020. Okay, let me go through it. Product goal is a commitment for product backlog. And what could be the product goal over here for COVID-19? Developing immunity against COVID-19 by vaccinating maximum citizens or all the citizens as early as possible. Another commitment is sprint goal for sprint backlog. There might be different sprints or several sprints for which the sprint goal could have been different. What I could thought of is controlling COVID-19 cases count. That could be one of the sprint goals. Another sprint goal could be vaccinating X percentage of the population in a month of time. Third commitment is definition of done for an increment. Now, I'm sure all of you must have experienced this, especially first two items. Both the doses are mandatory if you go to your workplace, if you want to go to theater for a movie, if you want to go to shopping mall, a huge grocery store, etc. And the concerned person at the entry gate, the security person that used to ask us, hey, sir, ma'am, are you vaccinated with both the doses? Please show your certificate. Yes, have we come across this experiment or this experience? Perfect. And if you want to travel abroad, or maybe if you want to travel in from one state to another where there are a high number of cases of COVID, there were also some travel guidelines that even though you are vaccinated with both the doses of COVID, still you have to do RT-PCR, which is not less than X hours. So probably 48 hours or 72 hours based on the different requirements. So if you are not done with this, you will not be allowed to move further. So this is what I could think of as a definition of done. Next is empirical Scrum pillars. What are the Scrum pillars of empiricism? If somebody can give me an answer and help me with it. What are the different Scrum pillars? Transparency, perfect. Adaptation, inspection, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so it is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Now, let's go back to our very initial slides when I said about discovering the vaccination. So many trials, so many experiments, day in, day out, all the concerned authorities, the scientists, doctors have must have done in order to get the right vaccination and ensuring the people's health. Without that inspect and adapt cycle, no vaccination could come into the market. Even if I take another example of inspect, adapt, as well as transparency, day in, day out, the COVID cases were published in our newspaper or maybe in some of the websites. Although we might have heard that those are like either exaggerated figures or lower figures than the actual ones, but still there was some level of transparency. It was not that we were completely kept into the dark. And based on the situations, there were continuous inspect, adapt cycles by concerned authority that was going on. If I take a few more examples, initially we had a lockdown of 21 days. Later on, it got reduced to 15 days. Again, the COVID cases when came into control, there were lockdowns only in specific cases where the count was high. For rest of the cases, there was no lockdown. in different states. In some of the states, you might have also come across about the night curfews and everything, while in some it was not. So this is how the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation went throughout in this cycle. Were there multiple Scrum teams? What Scrum Guide says is if the Scrum team becomes too large, they should consider reorganizing in multiple cohesive Scrum teams, each focused on the same product. I could think that there were multiple Scrum teams based on my limited understanding. If somebody can try or if want to try, if they also could see different Scrum teams. Let me give you a hint. Initially, I could thought of our country, India, as only one Scrum team. Now, did they divided into different or multiple cohesive Scrum teams? I could thought of it as different states. State A, state B, state C, state D. I am deliberately not putting name of any of the states because we are just doing it for our information purpose. And they all were sharing the same product backlog. They might be having their respective different scrum cycle or their different sprint length. They also might be having different sprint goals, but ultimately all of them were contributing towards the same product backlog, and they were sharing the same they were contributing towards same product goal and sharing the same product backlog. Did they become self-managed teams? Now this is the goal of every scrum team, every organization, that their scrum team should become a self-managed scrum team after a certain period of time. How I could think of they becoming a self-managed team is, see, when COVID, this pandemic started, majority of the guidelines were coming from the states, may it be lockdown, may it be night curfew. I don't mean that states had do not state did not have any role to play over there, but there was a limited role from the states. But as and when we started getting acquainted with COVID phase two or wave two, wave three, and so on and so forth, there were many guidelines coming up from the respective states itself based on how the situation prevails in their respective states. Some states might have lockdown, some might not have, right? If I take an example, use of mask. As on this date, there are certain states where mask is not mandatory if you go out, while in other states still the mask is mandatory. So it depends on the respective state, considering as a different or respective scrum team, what they want to implement in their sprint, what is going to be their definition of done. Yeah. So this is what I could think of, that after maybe 2.5 years of passing of time, they could become a self-managed team. Once the wave 3 had ended, there was a guideline from central government that now central government is not going to intervene in any of the states with respect to COVID-19. Whatever guidelines they have prescribed, respective state can inspect and adapt and implement based on the situation over there. Okay, this is some of the reference from which I could get my thought about this presentation. Any questions, audience over here?
No questions, Jayesh, so far. I'm looking at the chat.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is what I had to share my views on. I again thank you everyone for patiently listening to me on this topic. I hope I could give a different perspective of looking at Scrum outside software product development. I wish you a very good evening and a happy weekend. Thank you, everyone. Have
Even
a good
from us, Jayesh, from
yeah.
Regional Scrum Gathering, thank you very much for beautifully articulating complete COVID-19 journey and covering the entire aspects of Scrum framework as well. You touched upon a lot of things actually, right from the beginning: Scrum theory, artifacts, right, events, You connected all the dots with the journey. It
Yep.
was very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Satish. Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful comment. Thank you, all the participants, for your wonderful comments. Very, very, I wish you all the very best for all your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jayesh.